Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back for more ALR action, and we are here in Shanghai for Silver Season 8 round 5. And looking forward to what is going to be an exciting qualifying first. Of course, I get ahead of myself. So qualifying first and then the race. But I'm sure the race will be just as entertaining as well then. So stay tuned. We're going to have some action here tonight here in Silver. And welcome along then to the drivers then on the grid then. And welcome along to the drivers, well, the drivers and the spectators in the comment section. We're looking forward to an exciting one this evening, I should say. Goodness me, I'm stumbling over me words because I've just had me dinner and I don't know what I'm doing. Right then, we have got 20 drivers on the grid then. Unfortunately, a complement of bronze drivers have joined us as well. And I think 3 or 4 of them have jumped in then to fill up the grid then. Unfortunately, there's a couple of sabbaticals then for some of the Belgian and Dutch drivers then who have gone on holiday for a couple of days, or a couple of weeks, I think, actually. So there we go. I think we've got some action then with a Mercedes, and it is Kiki, of course. Kiki, a challenger then for the top of the standings then in the last few races. Been absolutely spectacular indeed, especially in qualifying. Let's see what he can do here tonight in Shanghai as we take to the circuit then for the Mercedes driver then. Of course, it is very nice and sunny here in Shanghai for the qualifying. Of course, if you watch the gold race, it was absolutely horrible. In the race itself, in the qualifying, it was just like this. So we'll have to wait and see what the drivers are going to be facing in the race then. Of course, it was rain from the very start of the race and heavy wet rain in gold last night. Then it was an absolute spectacle to watch indeed. But especially not to drive in though. But especially then for the top of the drivers, that is, who absolutely put on a great show indeed then in gold. Then let's see what the silver drivers, the silver stallions, then are going to put on the screens for tonight. Then of course, looking forward to seeing what Kiki can do. Then what the rest of the field can do. Then can Beast, can Mumford carry on their fight then in the top of the standings and to keep the title fight quite hotly contested between just 2 of them, really. As I think Plotters then in P3 then is a bit far back then at this stage in the standings, but there's still plenty of races to go. Then 20 races, I think it's 20 races or 19 races to go after this one as well then. So it's a long old season. Anything can happen. Of course, we had a patch today as well, which apparently has, it has slightly changed the handling, especially on controller, I believe it was. It did say that there was some minor game improvements then to controller handling, because I don't know if you raced on controller, but I have, and of course, if you're mid-corner, it would be very snappy indeed. Then Kiki has invalidated his next lap then, unfortunately for Kiki, so going around at the penultimate corner a bit too fast, and that is that for Kiki then. Unfortunately, he is going to have to cruise back round to the pit lane, or wait again then to go again on the next lap. Then we'll have to wait and see if he is going to try that or not, but we'll have to find out later on in the qualifying. Vesio is on track, but he's on intermediate compound tyres, so he is not worth watching in my opinion, because it is a very dry track. Then definitely not intermediate compound tyres out there for the time being. Then Beast is on the circuit, and we are seeing what Beast can do then in the other Mercedes, then riding on board then down towards turn 1, then flying through turn 1, and of course into technically it's the same corner, into turn 2 as well here, then down the hill towards turn 3, then negotiating it very nicely. You've got to be very careful on the power here on the exit, then going full beams now for the Mercedes driver then as we head towards the end of sector 1. Then yellow flags fluttering then for cars just starting their flying laps here, locking up the front right and the front left, I think, there as well, into the hairpin as we go now into sector 2. Then I think Beast is going to set the first competitive time here in Shanghai in this qualifying session, so we'll stay on board then with the Mercedes driver, the current P2 in the standings, of course, after last week in Japan then, when Mumford got himself a 4-point gap at the top of the standings as it stands in, only 4 rounds in. Then unfortunately there's a Ferrari who's had an issue there somewhere, so just getting out of the way then. Evening all from Mushroom then. New controls, way better. No more dancing around the track then, says Serious Mushroom. Then yes, it does feel a lot more like F1 23 from my point of view. So whether that's good or not is another question, but I'm sure there'll be people who love it and people who hate it, because that's the scene that we're in Formula 1, it seems anyway. Now into the hairpin then, the penultimate corner then for Ultimate Beast. Then once again then negotiating this very nicely indeed, then cutting the corner corner, then cutting the chicane, cutting the corner, I should say, into the penultimate hairpin then, and now flying around the final quarter, keeping it within track limits then. Unlike his teammate to start off the lap then, it's a 31.4 then in the first lap of qualifying then for Ultimate Beast, then Mr. Elite a 33.3 right behind in the McLaren, then the Camaro Racer a 31.7 then in the background, and then Plotters a 31.3 then in the Red Bull. Then Plotters then looking to regain his form then in the championship standings as well. Donald the Dons has retired. He's in the pit. No, he's not in the pit lane. Where is he? Goodness me, what has happened there to Don the Dons? And he's had a problem there somewhere. And he has left the session as well, I think, there. So, goodness me, I'm not quite sure what happened there to Donald the Dons then, but fingers crossed he was out of the way then of the drivers coming through. Kiki has got himself back on a lap now, and this time he is using some battery then, he's using some ERS, then he's using his performance and his ability then to try and get himself into the top echelons of qualifying. Then MHD with a 31.286 then puts himself P1 in the Ferrari tonight. Then so far so good then for the Ferrari outfit. Then here comes Kiki, then can he challenge then for the top of the standings and in this grid? Then can he get himself higher up the order then for this start of this Grand Prix? Then of course this was his first time on the board then, so he's not going to get himself higher. Well, he will get himself higher if he keeps a lap valid, but let's see what he can do then up to the line this time for Kiki, and it's a 31.9 then puts himself P5 then just behind Camaro Racer and his teammate Beast in P3. Then there we go, good stuff indeed. Jay Hings it up to P6 then, a 32.2 then for the Aston Martin driver. Been brilliant so far in this season and very, very clean and consistent then from Jay Hings then, just like his teammate Gordo, who unfortunately is not with us tonight. Then it's Swan Shanks in the Aston Martin then in his place. Then Donald the Don said a wheel stopped working then, unfortunately, for Donald the Don then, so hopefully he can get that fixed then before the start of the race then. Unfortunately, I think he left the session at the same time, and so he is not going to be able to take part in qualifying anymore. As we go on to the back straight and look at this, and there's some DRS, there's some slipstream action here from the Alpine pair. This is going to be fantastic stuff indeed then, if they can keep doing this through qualifying. Very good stuff indeed, very good teamwork indeed then down at Alpine as we go into the hairpin now for Mumford. Then Mumford, of course, challenging for the top of the standings and currently the championship leader as it stands after 4 rounds, and sliding it through the back end then into the final quarter, then up to P3 with a 31.383 as well. Then good stuff indeed, as that was, I think, Sven Peter coming back to the pit lane. He's done 32.5 then, has the Alpine driver, then coming back into the box then after his first outing here in qualifying. Potentially Mumford might return the favour then in the latter part of qualifying as well. We'll have to wait and see. So far, so good out there. Unfortunately, only a few drivers have set a time so far. Brooksy's out on a lap as well then, so that is good stuff indeed. Well, he's on an out lap at the moment. Mumford is cruising back to the pit lane, and he is onto the second row of the grid as it stands then. He is currently just under a 10th away from pole position, and it's not too far away then for Mumford. Close indeed in qualifying in gold last night then. Will it be even closer here in silver then? It's been very close in silver all through the ALR, their ALR career, I think, has silver then. It's been absolutely brilliant then to watch as Brooksy then is on a flying, not a flying lap, sorry, he's on a flying out lap at the moment, then coming through sector 2 then in the Racing Bulls. Where is the rest of the action? And I think we're going to see some more action further along. It's going to be no, it's not an Alpine. No, it isn't. It is an Alpine. Sorry, that is an Alpine coming back to the pit lane. That is Mumford. So we'll stay on board with Brooksy then into sector 3 and see what he is up to as we fly through the spoon curve. Then very spoony this circuit, as I love to say, then they have all the corners that nobody else wanted on their tracks, and they just put them all together and made the Shanghai International Circuit. So there we go. Funny story. It's definitely not true, but that is exactly what I'm saying. So there we go then, as Brooksy then just leading off into the to finish off his out lap here then and start off his first flying lap, then his actual first flying lap of the season as well then. So we'll see what the Racing Bulls driver can do then as he gets on the power now, heading towards the start finish straight. Then the timer has started as well then as we head in towards turn 1 now, and flicking that Racing Bull into turn 1, then going very wide then into turn 2, and of course cutting in at that curb, then now going left as well down the hill into turn 3, then getting himself ready and pointed in the right direction to get himself on the power as quickly as possible, then in towards turn 4, which is technically this corner here, which isn't much of a corner. Purple in sector 1, that's promising stuff indeed for Brooksy. Then into the hairpin, of course, he is the bronze champion, and so if he's going purple, that is very promising stuff indeed then as we head into sector 2 now as well. flying through the left-hander now into the same but on the right, and then we've got two left-handers basically perpendicular, then into one left and then into another left, then getting himself into fourth gear, then onto fifth quickly as well, then down towards the next spoon curve, then the final spoon curve of the lap as well, thankfully, as we get ourselves through this lap, then into sector 3, then as we're negotiating that very nicely indeed, then the ERS light flashing away then on the back of that Racing Bull. That is good news. It's bad news, I think, there, but he has still got enough ERS to get himself down this straight, then DRS as well, then as that rear wing opens as we fly down towards the hairpin once again, then for Brooksy this time, then into the hairpin, his first flying lap then of the season, and into that hairpin very nicely indeed as well then from Brooksy, then on the exit, getting the power down very quickly indeed as well as we head into the final corner now for Brooksy. Let's see what he can do then, keeping it within track limits just about then. Here he comes up to the line. It's a 32.1, then puts himself P7 here in the Racing Bull. Good stuff indeed, just ahead of Jay Hings, his former bronze rival, of course, which we saw some great battles between Jay Hings and Brooksy, didn't we, in the last iteration of bronze, season 7 that was. Go back and watch that. It was a fantastic season, especially for Brooksy and Jay Hings, and for Kiki as well then, who finished P3 in that season as well then. But so far so good then out there. We have got a kick Sauber of Marvsky coming across the line. Then let's see what Marvsky can do. It's a 32-1 then for Marvsky, splits Jay Hings and Brooksy, of course. Marvsky currently in bronze as well then, so it's showing that Marvsky's got some pace here tonight then as well, to put himself into the mix as well then with the silver drivers. Then Reflection P10 for the time being. Sweet MGP is back out on circuit, then we'll have to come back to him because we've got a Mercedes, I think. No, it's not a Mercedes of Kiki then, just starting off another lap then. Where's the McLaren then of Mr. Elite? Then Mr. Elite has improved by 0.4 of a second, but he stays P12 then. He's into the 32.899s. Then we've just had Nigel jump up the order to P8 then. Nigel just ahead of his Kick Sauber teammate then, as MHD goes even faster with a 31.181 then. Great stuff indeed then from MHD. Then he is flying out there at this stage. Let's see where Beast is going to put himself. Where's Beast? Beast has gone faster still then with the 31.1 as well then, but he's only, well, what is that? I can't do the maths quickly enough. 33 thousandths of a second ahead of MHD. That is fantastic stuff indeed. Beast there is back in form then, and back in control, then back on pole position potentially as well. We'll have to wait and see, but it's looking good so far. Here comes Plotters then into the final quarter. Then can he steal away that pole position? Donald Dons is back in the session. Here comes Plotters. He's up to P1. I know he's up into P2, I should say. Goodness me, I'm getting ahead of myself then. He is, what is that then? That's 25 thousandths of a second behind Ultimate Beast then, so very tight in the top 3 as it stands then. Mumford just starting off on lap to go and try and improve as well then. Kamara Racer is powering down the back straight as well then. Kiki is coming as well. Kiki is coming. Let's watch out, everyone. Kiki is coming then as we come down to the hairpin now in the Mercedes, and let's see what he can do then. Can he improve? 31.9 as it stands then for Kiki in the Mercedes. Then he is going to have to find a few tenths of a second then to get himself into the first or second row of the grid. Into the pits comes Kamara Racer. Then round the final quarter comes Kiki. Then here he comes up to the line. What's it going to be? It's a 31.2. Then puts himself P4 then. So both Mercedes looking very strong out here as we go through the final stages of qualifying. Farf is up into P6. Goodness me, that is dangerous stuff indeed. And there is a Mercedes, I think, just of Kiki just coming around as well. They're both finishing off their laps, I believe. Then Sweet MGP is up into P8. Then he has improved from P12. Then Nigel down into P10 then. I think he's got time on the board. We'll have to wait and see. There's a slow car, but that is causing yellow flag. I can't see the timer, unfortunately, but there's a slow car that's coming back to the pit then, I think, then. And that will be that then. Brooks is down to P9. Then Farf is coming back to the pits as well. Then we've got that's Plotters then coming back to the pits as well. Then I think whereas Mumford has invalidated his time, so unfortunately he's got 4.5 minutes to get himself back in the pits and back out again. There is time. There is still time. Sweet MGP is coming back in as well, I believe. Let's see what the rest of the field are doing. Then there's a Haas out there on the attack then, and the attack is for Irvine. Then into the hairpin. Then powering on the brakes. Then foot on the floor, slowing that car down and re-accelerating once again with his other foot, hopefully, and into the final corner now for Irvine, his first run, and he has abandoned his time, unfortunately, so he's back in the pit lane then. Marvsky is coming back in the box as well. Then he is done and dusted, and Jay Hings is going to be starting off a flying lap very soon as well then, so we'll stay on board with Jay Hings, because I think he is the next driver to cross the line to start off a flying lap then. We'll stay on board with car number 5. Only one car number 5 in the Aston Martin tonight then. Of course, if you're not familiar with the silver scene, there is two Aston Martin drivers usually, and both of them, the full-time drivers that is, are both car number 5. That is Jay Hings and Gordo. Unfortunately, Gordo not with us tonight then, but of course, hopefully he is enjoying the stream from afar. We don't know where he is, but hopefully he is not lost. But there we go then, Jay Hings. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just rambling on about all sorts of stuff now. Here comes Jay Hings then into Sector 1, then almost a 3/10 improvement. That would put him, as it stands, then in the range of the top 10 as it is as well, which is looking pretty formidable as it stands as well. Of course, the track is evolving as the session continues, and we go flying into Sector 2 now in the Aston Martin and keeping that car pointed in the right direction very nicely indeed then. And that car is twitchy indeed as well. It looks like for the Aston Martin driver then, as though we've got a, oh dear, there's a, I thought there's a Red Bull then, or a Racing Bull then, having a bit of a slow lap then into the hairpin. Then here comes Jay Hings now into Sector 3. Let's see what time he's up then. We can't. That's not great, so I'm not quite sure what happened there, but it didn't show me the delta then as he went into Sector 3 then, so that is probably just me being useless. Evening all from Vintage and evening to Nolsey as well. Goodness me, thank you very much. That's very nice of you then. Evening to Vintage as well then. Perpendicular, have you swallowed the dictionary? I think he's talking to me, but goodness me, if I have swallowed the dictionary, I don't know what's going to come out. Here comes Jay Hings, though, into the final corner. Then the ERS light flashing deployment used then on this lap, then up to the line. It's a 32-1, then puts himself... He's just retired on the track then, has Jay Hings, so that is pretty dangerous stuff indeed then for Jay Hings. Unfortunately, we caught it on stream as well then, so he might be in a bit of trouble then from Smithy Almighty after this race. But fingers crossed that Aston Martin doesn't cause any issues then for drivers who are coming out of the pit lane or on their laps as well. Then Brooksy is flying in Sector 2 then. Let's see what Brooksy is up to then as we go into the final sector then for the Racing Bull driver then. 2/10 improvement then. That will put him into the 31s, I should say. Goodness me, not that far behind then as we go through the spoon curve once again then for Brooksy. That car, that back end looking very twitchy indeed then as he goes through the final spoon curve then onto the back straight. Then there's a nice distant toe then from a kick Sauber then, who needs to realise that he's going to have Brooksy in the in his wing mirrors very shortly. Gets out of the way thankfully of the charging Racing Bull then into the hairpin we go then for Brooksy, and back on the power very quickly indeed as well then into the final corner. Let's see what he can do. Irvine's retired in the pit lane. He is done and dusted in qualifying. Unfortunately, no time on the board then. Here comes Brooksy though. What can Brooksy do then? Into the 31.6s, puts himself P8 then on his first qualifying outing as well then. Brilliant stuff indeed. Great lap indeed then from Brooksy. Marvsky just starting off a lap as well then, as we've got quite a few drivers then just starting off their laps. Then Brooksy in the background then is just trying to get himself out of the way then of these drivers who are flying through then. Vessia then hasn't got time on the board then. He is struggling then, trying to get the power down into Sector 2 then in the Ferrari then, currently looking to get his first lap time on the board here, as well as Brooksy then is just cruising to getting himself out of the way then in Sector 1, and has done as well very nicely indeed. Good stuff indeed as well then. Out of the final couple of corners then, Keychains just starting off a lap. Then we've got a McLaren of Mr. Elite, I think, just starting off a lap as well. Swanshanks has retired in the pit lane, I believe. Nigel then has got enough time to start off a lap, I think, just about. Yes, he's got 20 seconds or so then across the line. Let's start off his lap then. Farf, has he got enough time? Farf, who's that? Brooks, just getting out of the way then. Farf has got enough time to start off a lap then. Good stuff indeed. Then Riyadh then has not got himself out of the pit lane in time. So unfortunately for Riyadh, then he is done and dusted in qualifying without setting a time here either, as we've got an Ultimate Beast then. Ultimate Beast is coming across the line then. He has not improved on his final run, unfortunately for Ultimate Beast then. What can Kamara... No, it's not Kamara Racer, it's Reflection. Reflection improves by 0.4 of a second, puts himself P11. Then Mumford has gone faster still then in the Alpine. A 31.1 on the dot then for the Alpine driver. That's fantastic stuff. And Don of the Dons has left the session in disgust then, unfortunately for Don of the Dons. But so far so good. Mumford currently on pole position then. Ultimate Beast can't do anything about it, I don't think. Then Plotters then stays P3. Here comes MHD in the Ferrari. Can he get himself into pole position? Then it's going to be close indeed. It's P2 then by 0.02 of a second. It's so close between the Alpine of Mumford and MHD on the front row of the grid then so far. Goodness me, that is close stuff indeed. 0.2 of a second for pole position then. It's almost identical by 3 decimal places. If you didn't count that, that's pretty good. Here comes Kiki then into the hairpin. Then let's see what Kiki can do then. Can he get himself onto the front row of the grid then? Can he get himself on pole position here? We will find out now. Oh goodness me, no he won't. That is terribly It's terribly bad stuff indeed for Kiki. Then across the line then stays P5. Kamara is back in the pit lane. Farf is coming through. Then Farf is 3/10 up on his time. This is going to be very, very good stuff indeed. Then if he can get himself across the line, then in the racing bull, then up to the line for Farf, then what's it going to be? It's P4, second row of the grid for Farf. His highest qualifying then of the season so far. Brilliant stuff indeed. Then here comes Nigel. Then Nigel is cruising down the back straight. Then I don't know if Nigel's on a lap. Then I don't think he is actually. So I think that is qualifying done and dusted. Then here we are, Mumford on pole position. Then a 31-100 then to take pole position here in Shanghai, and 0.02 of a second behind is MHD, which is well, what a qualifying that was. I think that's the closest qualifying we've ever had, to be fair. It's pretty close indeed then. So there we go then. Good stuff from MHD. Then Don the Dons has joined back as well. Then hopefully he can get himself back in the car quickly enough to take the race start then, as Altavis has crossed the line then in P3 for the time being. Then Nigel then coming back into the box as well then in P13. Unfortunately for the Kick Sauber driver, then didn't get his final run in qualifying. Unfortunately then that's put him down the order then to start off this race. But what a qualifying at the top then. 1/10 of a second separates, well, what does it separate? It separates the top 5. It doesn't even separate the top 5. 73 thousandths of a second separates the top 5. So that is one hell of a qualifying indeed from Silver. And what a showing indeed. That if that's going to carry on into the race, then I will be all for it then, because I will be out of breath before lap 1 is finished. I'm already out of breath anyway, so there we go. But brilliant stuff indeed. Then there is P2. Then MHD in P2 will run through the classification very shortly for the Shanghai or the Chinese Grand Prix qualifying here in Silver Season 8. But so far, so good then. What a lap, what a race, then what a race we've got coming up, I think, then, if that is going to be anything to go by, then. Mumford then pole position in the Alpine. Brilliant stuff indeed. MHD P2, Beast in P3, Farf P4, Plotters P5, Kiki P6, Kamara P7, then Marvsky in P8, then good showing from Marvsky as well. Then Brooksy P9, Sweet P rounds off the top 10, Jay Hings P11, Reflection P12, Nigel P13, Mr. Elite P14, Vessia P15. Unfortunately for Riyadh, Vintage, Swanshanks, Irvine, and Don of the Dons, they couldn't get a time on the board. Goodness me. Perpendicular indeed. Right then, good luck all from Serious Mushroom in the comment section then. Thank you very much for Mushroom then, wishing me some good luck then. It is not raining at the start of this race, unlike Gold last night then, so that is promising stuff indeed as well. As we get ourselves ready then, getting ourselves warmed up for the start of this, for the very start of this race as well then, after a quick word from our lovely sponsors. Right then, we are back. We are ready to get racing. And look at that then. 4 drivers opting for the medium compound tyres. That is Marsky in P8, Camaro in P7, Farf in P4, and Ultimate Beast in P3. Every other driver, 16 of them that is, doing the quick maths that is on the hard compound tyres to start off this Grand Prix. Hard to mediums then is the predicted strategy then. Potentially hard medium then. I'm not quite sure that is the best race strategy, but we'll find out then what the drivers are going to be up to in this race then as we get ourselves through the 28 laps to unfold here in Shanghai tonight then. Looking good so far then. That is your grid as it stands in. Mumford on pole position, then MHD P2, Ultimate Beast in P3, Farf on the second row of the grid for the first time, or his highest position in qualifying for the first time this season. Plotters P5, Kiki P6, then Camaro row, and Marvsky on the mediums in P7 and P8 then on the 4th row of the grid, that is. Brooksy in P9. Good stuff from Brooksy as well then, after struggling at the start of the game. Then Sweet and Repeat rounds off the top 10 in the in this grid. Then I should say then they're good stuff indeed. Then Jay Hings just out of the top 10. Same for Reflection at Nigel and Mr. Elite. Then Vessia didn't get a competitive lap on the board, unfortunately, in P15. Riyadh, Vintage, Swanshanks, Irvine and Dollar the Dons didn't get a time on the board, unfortunately, in their qualifying attempts. Then Dollar the Dons is back in the car and able to take the race start as well then. Good luck all then, Zez Plotters as well then. That was tight at the top indeed. Then P5 then for the Red Bull driver. Let's see what he can do then in the Grand Prix as we get ourselves set then to start on this race. A bit of a problem then for some people on a formation lap though, as they seem to be forgetting that they're meant to be part of the starting grid, I think, in this race. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what is going on down there. But nonetheless then, of course, when you are locked into your grid slot, the tyre temperatures lock in as well before the race, before the 5 red lights go on, that is. So they don't have to worry too much then, as the last few drivers then get themselves through the hairpin then onto the penultimate corner then and get themselves parked up on the starting grid. Then let's see what they can do here in Shanghai then for the Chinese Grand Prix round 5 of Silver Season 8 then. Let's see how it's going to go then. Hopefully we get a better camera angle than this, but I don't think we do. So there we go then. Fantastic stuff indeed then. We'll have to just sit on board with MHD and see what the red lights are doing, because I can't see them from that far back then. And we've got to pause. Got a pause then. Here we go then. The 5 red lights are coming on here in Shanghai. The 5 red lights are on, the 5 red lights are off, and away we go then for the Chinese Grand Prix. It's a great start from MHD. He's gone past Mumford. I can't quite see what's going on here, but there we go then. So far, so good. Beast has got himself past Mumford as well on those medium compound tires. Then Beast trying to go around the outside. There's contact between the 2 championship rivals as well then. They're inside of each other as, goodness me, then Mumford struggling on those hard compound tires, and Beast has got himself up into P2. Then Farf has taken the lead then into turns 2 and 3. And he's got himself miles up in there in the order. Then Plotter's going for the inside, then into the hairpin. Then he's got himself up into P4, passes Mumford, who's going wide on the exit. Then he's having a few problems then, it looks like, on those hard compound tyres, as Kiki's trying to challenge the Red Bull car as well. Then through into Sector 2, then side by side with Mumford, his championship rival as well. Then into Sector 2, then they're close indeed. Then these two banging wheels almost, I think, but Mumford has got himself through there just about. Then brilliant stuff indeed between Mumford and Kiki as well. Then Kamara raises the hold station, then Brooksy's gained a place, then Jay Ings has gained 2 places, then into the top 10, then Sweet and Repeat stays P10. Nigel's up 2 places, and the biggest losers unfortunately was Marvsky, Riyadh and Mr. Elite. Then we've had an issue then, as we've got Sweet and Repeat having an issue as well, then into the spoon curve, and he's got himself back underway, thankfully. Goodness gracious. As there we go then, Sweet back on way then. Mumford has dropped himself back past Plotters, then up into P4. I think they're side by side. No, he's got himself ahead of the Red Bull car, then in towards the hairpin now. Late on the brakes indeed as well, then, as we go through to finish off the first lap here in China. Then so far so good for Farf. He is leading the way out there, and what a start indeed. 3 places gained then into the first couple of corners. Then Sweet NJP, sorry, and Don of the Dons then switching places then into the hairpin, and back underway then for Sweet NJP. Then Swanshanks at the back of the order. Then he is in the DRS train. Then DRS has been activated then, but out in front, those 2 on the medium compound tyres are flying out there. They've got a DRS gap already of over 1 second to MHD and Mumford, who of course are on harder compound tyres. Mr. Elite is Mr. Elite is battling away. Then he was battling away with Riyadh then, wasn't he, as Kiki has resumed his battle. Kiki's had an issue somewhere because he's lost out to P11. Then unfortunately for Kiki, he was running in P6 ahead of Plotters at one point, ahead of Brooksy at one point, but he's now lost out. I'm not quite sure where he had that issue there, but he has now got himself back underway just outside the top 10 at the moment. Then those hard compound tyres starting to warm up here as we get ourselves through onto lap 2 now. Goodness me then, so far so good out here as well. Then brilliant race start, I should say, then for the majority of the field. Then of course those on the medium compound tyres have got a great start as well. Then this is Beast, this is Farf as well. They're powering away then through the spoon curve then on lap 2 here, and goodness me, we don't want Farf to be on the top 3 because we have to give him an interview, won't we, if that is the case then. But fingers crossed that changes in the latter part of the race, and for my sake, but there we go then, and for your ears' sake. Well, actually, to be fair, he doesn't say anything in the interview, so you don't have to worry too much. Mumford trying to get himself into that DRS window then of the Ferrari of MHD ahead of him, as we got Kiki then trying to challenge back into the top 10, then into the hairpin we go, then down the inside of Reflection, and Vessia putting his nose in there as well. Then where is Vessia and where is Reflection? Reflection's got the better power then out of the exit, then he's got the better traction out of the exit, then he stays P11 for the time being. He's back where he started then, I think, although it says dash and then 1 next to his name, so I'm not quite sure if he started there or if he has gained a place. Marvsky and Irvine are switching places then into turn 1 and 2. And up into turn 1 really, as look at this, Vessia trying to go down the inside of the Williams then into turn 2, but it's going to turn to the outside for turn 3, and he can't get himself through. Then Marvsky's got himself through though. Marvsky is going through on the medium compound tyres, then Vessia then harvesting a bit of energy, then he's lost out to the kicks out, but then in we go, and then great shot indeed, then as we go really deep on the brakes then for Marvsky, almost into the back then as we go through into sector 2 now as well then. And there's Vessia then challenging, and Marvsky needs to keep his eyes on his wing mirrors as well then, because there's a Ferrari right behind him, there's a Williams right in front of him as well there. Goodness me, that could have been dicey indeed then, but Marvsky then on the charge then on those medium compound tyres, trying to get himself back in the top 10 where he started. Of course he started P8 then on those mediums, had a difficult start, and Reflection's got a bit squirrely out of the left-hander then, and that could open the door then for the kick salver. What a fantastic camera shot we've got here, as we can see in the background, and there is far from there is Ultimate Beast then flying down the back straight. Here comes the Beast then on the attack. Let's see, well there's an Aston Martin off the back of the field then, but here we go then, we're looking at the lead then. The lead has changed hands now as Ultimate Beast is back up into P1. Brilliant stuff indeed then from Ultimate Beast then, where he is familiar then. Mumford has got himself past MHD and back into the top 3 into the podium places now for the Alpine. Good stuff indeed then. They're on the charge then after a difficult first lap, as we've got Irvine, we've got all sorts of things going on here. Marvsky has got himself up into P11 then ahead of Irvine. Vessia's dropped down to P14, I think then. No, he's battling with Reflection, wasn't he? So they have carried on their fight then. It looks like Irvine's up 7 places, then he's up into P12. There is the Haas driver then. He's under pressure from Reflection then, but he's held on to that place for the time being as well. Then Marvsky up into P11, then trying to chase down Nigel, who's got himself into the top 10 here, and on the back of Kiki as well then, as we go through turns 2 and 3 as well then. Good stuff indeed then out in front. The gap is over 3.5 seconds now between the top 2 then. These two here are powering away then. Farber's been in control of the race and up into the last lap then, where he's overtaken down the back straight by the Mercedes driver of Ultimate Beast, then almost losing the back end there as well. Then Reflection's got himself past Vessia into sector 2. There's a problem then for Kiki. Kiki's lost the car then at the exit of the hairpin into sector 2 then. He's got himself turned back around and back underway. I'm not quite sure if there's any damage then for the Mercedes driver. Then Reflection and Vessia then still battling away through sector 2. No wing damage doesn't look like then for the Mercedes driver. Good stuff indeed. Hopefully he can carry on. Reflection is really having a problem then with that back end then through sector 2, and that has cost him to Vessia. Then Vessia's got himself back up into P12. Then Irvine's gained 8 places already in this first 4 laps. So far so good for Irvine. He is flying out there actually. Brilliant stuff indeed then. 2 seconds of the gap between Nigel and the top 8 I should say then, into P1. Back into P1 goes Farf in the racing ball, then he takes back the lead down the back straight then from the Beast, as they've now got a 3-second gap then to Mumford then in P3. So far so good then out in front then. The medium compound tyres of course will start to drop off before the hard compound tyres I should say. We've only got 4 drivers on the medium compound tyres. That is Kamara, that is Marvsky, and that is these two here then fighting for the race lead then into lap 5. So far so good then for the Mercedes and for the Racing Bull. We've got Vintage and Riyadh then switching places, then Riyadh ahead into P14 now. Of course, no time on the board then for either of these two drivers, I don't think, in qualifying, so they are going to have to try and make their way through the field in this Grand Prix then on the hard compound tyres to start off with as well. So far so good then. Kiki just trying to catch up to the back of the pack at this stage then, but he's only 2 seconds off as well. Not too far away then for Kiki then to get himself back in this race then into sector 2. We've got some grey clouds forming here. Will we see some rain in Shanghai once again then? Of course we saw quite a lot of rain last night then. Heavy wet rain to start off the race, then switching to intermediates towards the end. But so far it is staying dry then out in Shanghai for the silver drivers. We're only 5 laps in though, so anything could happen. And I do think it's getting grayer and grayer. Then the sun is trying to peek through, but I don't think it can that much then, as we go through onto the back straight then through the final spoon curve then onto the back straight here for Ultimate Beast and for Farf then. Here we go then once again then. The battle resumes for the race lead then, and Beast is going for it then in towards the hair hairpin. He's got the race lead back then into the race lead once again then for the Mercedes driver. Then he keeps hold of that race lead into the hairpin, and now can he power away then? Of course, he's got the medium compound tyres as well as Farf. They've got a 3-second gap. The gap's staying quite stable then between the top two and Mumford. Then maybe the medium compound tyres are starting to fade out already then compared to the hard compound tyres. We'll have to wait and see then. Reflection and Riyadh then switching places then at the exit of the hairpin. Then Reflection goes wide, but he held. Oh goodness me! And Riyadh is all over the place there. Goodness me, that was very dangerous stuff indeed. Then Riyadh has lost out to Vintage and to Sweet MGP, who's trying to get himself through in towards turn one. But Riyadh keeping control of the car very nicely indeed. At least he had control of the car eventually. To keep him in contention here as well then. Otherwise that was looking like a very serious smash indeed at the exit of the final corner then, and we have seen quite a few smashes at the exit of the final corner then in real life F1 as well, and in the Formula 1 history, that is Formula 1 ALR history as well. So there we go, so far so good then as we go through onto lap 6 now as well then. When will the medium compound tyres start to fade off? When will the hard compound tyres fade in, I suppose you could say, in the next few laps or so? Then we'll have to find out then. Good luck from Rick as well then. That is R2 Beat as well then, who spun off on the grid then, says Serious Mushroom then. I didn't see, I can't remember now. Too far back that is, that's 6 laps ago. I can't keep up with that sort of thing. So there we are. So there we come as well for Farf once again. Then he's already side by side before the DRS is even open then with the Ultimate Beast, as cruising along then. DRS now back open then for the Racing Bull, and flying down towards the hairpin. Then I think neither of them are trying to use not trying to use as little ERS as possible at this stage, as through the hairpin we go then, and Beast trying to get himself a narrow exit then, but Farf holds on to the race lead now as we cruise into lap 7 then. And Farf, oh my goodness me, both of them almost losing the car onto the start-finish straight, and that's going to open the door once again for Beast to go for the move into turn 1. He's got the move done with some DRS as well, and now the gap 2.8 seconds back to Mumford. So I think the medium compound tyre starting to fade out here very gradually at this stage. Oh my goodness me, Farf is going for the move then on Beast, and going around the outside at turn 3. That is going to be very dicey indeed then. He's got himself, unfortunately he couldn't get himself past it. He almost got himself past then. Good stuff indeed then. Reflection, I think, Sweet and Repeat, sorry, and Riyadh are battling away then with Vintage as we go into turn 3, and these drivers then are starting to form a bit of a queue then. Mr. Elite, a bit of a tap on the back then with Riyadh, I think there, but he is back in the fight then, it looks like, as we go into the hairpin once again then into sector 2 now onto lap 7 then. Oh goodness me, Sweet and Repeat going for a very risky move it looked like there, but he has got a penalty for his troubles as well. There are three track limit warnings for Sweet and Repeat, the first penalty of the evening so far, but the penalties might rack up around here. Potentially we have to wait and see then. Of course the goat that is, I should say, Choi, and got a penalty in the Chinese Grand Prix last night in gold, and goodness me, Reflection is off the circuit then, and we've seen him have a few issues there already in this race, and unfortunately I think he got away with that one, but unfortunately that was very, very bad indeed. Then he has got the left eight plate missing on that Williams car. Unfortunately for Reflection, he's not having a great time there. MHD's got himself back past Mumford then into the podium places now for MHD, and back past the Alpine car then. That is going to be very interesting stuff indeed. And if they start battling, that's going to help. As goodness me, what's happening there? Sweet and Repeat has been passed then by Riyadh and by Vintage, I think, then into the hairpin. Around the outside goes the Haas car. Can he hold on to it is the question. Goodness me, it's getting very very twitchy indeed. Then there's contact between Riyadh and Sweet MGP as well then. As goodness me, what are they doing out there? I think they're playing bumper cars more than anything else as we go through then, and Sweet MGP's got the DRS then into turn 1, and there's oh my god, there's Mr. Elite on the inside there, and Mr. Elite there's contact with Riyadh as well, and goodness me, I don't know if Riyadh can see all these cars come in. It seems like he can't, but goodness me, it's getting a bit dicey down the back of the field then. Mumford has been passed by Plotters then. Mumford's had an issue then somewhere because he's lost out now to MHD and to the Red Bull of Plotters. Those tyres might be getting a bit too warm then for the Alpine, as the other two behind him have maybe just been saving their tyres then for a little bit later on in this first stint. Then Marvsky's got himself past Nigel because Nigel's off the circuit in sector 2. That is why. Trying to get himself back underway then, but now Vess is on the attack then into Sector 2 as well. Then Nigel holds on to the place just about then, but unfortunately we didn't see what happened to Nigel. Then he's had a problem there somewhere, as he was very close indeed with Marski, but unfortunately that has been very costly for the Kick Sauber driver, trying to get himself back underway in this race. Then of course he's just outside the top 10 as it stands there, but there's a few medium runners then who will have to pit very soon indeed. Oh my goodness me, I thought there was going to be a stroll incident then, not under safety car, as the drivers then piled into the hairpin. Then Vessia's back ahead of Nigel, then down the back straight into P11 now for Vessia, then trying to get himself back into the top 10 as well. Then out in front, 2 seconds the gap, then the medium compound tyres starting to fade out here as well. Then here comes Farf, then down the inside then, and that is a move we've already seen from Mr. Elite that doesn't work, and unfortunately for Farf then he tried to copy it, so he has come a cropper then, unfortunately for Farf, then losing out then massively indeed then to Ultimate Beast as well. Then unfortunately, as the contact was made then between Farf and Beast, then I think Farf then just needs to not stick his nose in where it doesn't belong. Then Mr. Elite's got himself past Vintage now up into P15, trying to chase down Riyadh and Sweet MGP. Then so far so good. Then Farf just clinging on to the DRS window then of the Ultimate Beast in front of him then, but he's lost the car then through Sector 2, pushing a bit too hard then on those old medium compact tyres then, and that's going to be costly indeed, because now MHD is in DRS range of the Racing Bull driver, I should say. Goodness me, I got there in the end. Wednesday was fun with 5 laps of rain, says RTB. Then we will wait and see then if the rain's going to come here in China then for silver as well, then into the Spoon Curve then, and just about I think Farf has escaped the DRS then of the Ferrari of MHD, it looks like at this stage, as we cruise then onto the back straight once again. Then the rear wings then do open then for both the Ferrari actually and the Red Bull of Plotters as well. Then Mumford, Kamara Racer, Brooksy, Jay Hings all following in this fight as well. Then into the hairpin we go. Then look at all the brake smoke coming off those cars, and as we go powering onto the brakes and then back on the accelerator quickly enough then to get themselves through into the final corner, then into lap 10 I should say. Goodness me, we are flying through this race. Then Marvsky and Irvine then battling away then into the final corner then, and Irvine has got himself ahead now of the Kick Sauber just about, I think. Yes, he has there. But Marvsky's got some DRS then into the pits in the background. I think there was Sweet MGP, then he's coming in the box then is Sweet MGP, calling it a day on the hard compound tyres, just like Reflection had to do I think with that wing damage. Then Kiki's back up into P16, Swan Trank's going slowly then down the main straight then, I think just letting is that rain? I think we've got some rain falling here then. We've got some rain falling here, and intermediate compound tyres going on the Alpine of Sweet Entropy then. Let's see what is going to happen here in this race then. Maybe the medium compound tyre runners are going to try and hold on then to the wet conditions then here in this Grand Prix. But Farf trying to get himself back in contention with Beast as well then. But MHD, Plotters, Mumford, Kamara Racer, Jay Hings, sorry, Brooksy and then Jay Hings are in this trio, in this train I should say then. Oh goodness me, then out in the background then Brooksy almost losing the car then. It looked like just like Reflection did at the exit of that left hand, the second left-hander then into Sector 2. Into Sector 3 we go now. The DRS still enabled then for all the drivers out there, but I don't know, was it wet enough then for the intermediate compound tyres? We'll have to wait and see what Sweet Entropy is up to on the circuit then. We'll have to find out then. We'll see what his Delta is up to as well then in the next few stages. Then here comes MHD then on the attack then into the final turn, the penultimate turn I should say, then trying to slow that car down. Now it's starting to get a bit moist out there as well then, so that is going to cause a few bit of havoc I think as we get ourselves through this lap. Then Beast into the pit lane then from the race lead, then can he slow the car down? Almost done a Lewis Hamilton. Then MHD has carried on, then so has Farf, so has Plotters, so has Mumford, so has Camaro, and so has Brooksy. The former race leader is into the pits. Then Plotters has gone for the race lead. Then Plotters takes the race lead then as we go through into turns 1 and 2. Then Farf is battling away. Then Mr. Elite picks up a 3-second penalty then for his troubles as well. Then MHD's got the inside then for turn 3. Then he's got the position as well up into P2. Has he? Yes, he has then. Good stuff indeed. Then intermediate compound tyres going on the Mercedes of Ultimate Beast then, and back out of the pit lane down in P15. Then Nigel's also in the box as well then. Same for Mr. Elite onto intermediate compound tyres. So the intermediates definitely are the chosen option then for those who are making their pit stops. Then Farf has got himself ahead of MHD, back ahead of MHD I should say then. Oh my goodness me, drifting it round Sector 2 though is Farf, as he has been for the last couple of laps or so, which is not good for his tyres for sure. but not quite sure if he's realised that yet. Marvsky is battling with Irvine, and Irvine's got himself ahead into P8 now on those hard compound tyres. Then Marvsky going very wide there, and MHD has been passed by Mumford. Has he into Sector 3? Yes, he has. Then Mumford has got the inside line. MHD's gone on the curb then, and this can open the door then for Williams then, and Kamara Racer then. Oh, goodness me, Kamara Racer just sticking his nose in. My God, what is going on there? MHD's gone for a spin, and Jay Hings has gone through. Then Mumford's up into P3. Brooksy's up into P3. And Mumford is down to P4, I should say. Then, goodness me, we didn't see what happened on the exit there. I think they lost traction as well then at the last second. Then MHD then trying to battle away, then led his teammate through then. But unfortunately for MHD, then he's had an issue then, I think, at the exit of that spoon curve, which is very treacherous in the dry, and I think has caught him out then in the wet as well. Then into the pits comes Farf, then yellow flags fluttering then for a reflection, I think. Then as into the box then comes Farf. Then Brooksy is carried on, then the rest of the field has carried on as well, actually, to be fair. Then Farf is coming in the box though to get onto the intermediate compound tyres. Then so is MHD as well. Then Riyadh is also into the box as well. Then goodness me, we're seeing all sorts of pit activity now. Is it wet enough then for the intermediate compound tyres just yet then, or is it still time for the dry tyres? We'll have to wait and see. Then here comes Beast. Beast is back up into the top 10 now on those intermediate compound tyres. We'll have to wait and see if he's going to have to get, if the tyres are the right choice, to be fair. 2.7 seconds or so behind Vintage as it stands, and I think it might be transitioning now to the the intermediate tyres at this stage. Then MHD coming out of the pit lane, he's down in P15. Riyadh coming out the box, then is he ahead of Mr. Elite? Not quite. Then Mr. Elite has made that undercut work then onto the intermediate compound tyres. Then brilliant stuff indeed, I should say, from the McLaren driver. Reflection back in the pits as well then. Intermediate compound tyres then for Kiki as well. Then Kiki's having a difficult race out there, but he's back underway. Plotters then is in the race lead then by 3 seconds then to Mumford, to Brooksy, to Kamara Racer, to Jay Hings, and to Irvine as well. Then Marvsky has just lost out then to Irvine at the moment, but so far so good then out there. Of course, there's a few drivers who pit for intermediate compound tyres, and a few drivers that are staying out then for the time being. We'll have to wait and see which is going to be the best strategy, though. We'll find out then in the next few moments, I think, then. But it looks like Ultimate Beast is making his way through on those intermediate tyres then, so we'll have to I think we might see some more drivers then pitting from the front of the order as it stands. Then we'll have to wait and see if they're going to come in the pits then, but it looks like very squirrely stuff indeed then for Plotters then on the exit of the hairpin. He's carrying on then, is the Red Bull driver. Then into the pits comes Mumford from P2. Then let's see where he's going to come out though, onto the almost on the grass. Then Brooksy then into the box as well then, so Brooksy calling it a day then on the hard compound tyres as well. It looks like they're all calling it a day then, as Kamara has been jumped by Jay Hings into the box then. Brilliant stuff indeed. What an overtake. Overtake of the season, anyone? Irvine then is up in P6 then, but where will he come out? Of course, there's going to be lots of pit stops to unfold then. Plotters has stayed out on the hard compound tyres. Beast back up into P2. Farf takes P3. Of course, they have pitted a lap or two earlier than the rest of this field. Then Mumford out in P4. Brooksy out in P5. Then Jay Hings P6. Then Kamara Racer in P7. Then Irvine coming out in P8. Then just ahead of Marvsky and Nigel, who's done 2 laps extra on the intermediate compound tyres. Had a bit more knowledge than Marvsky, I think, on those intermediates, and is ahead of his teammate then into P9. Then great stuff indeed. Then Riyadh and Mr. Elite are battling away. Then Mr. Elite is battling then for that P12 position. Oh, goodness me. He's almost lost the back end there. That could invite Riyadh back in there, and he has been invited back in. Then Riyadh takes back P12 then with that difficult exit then for the McLaren driver, then slowing down into the hairpin of Sector 2 now, and there we go, normal service resumed then. But we've got a problem then for Farf. Farf is off the circuit then in Sector 2, same place where he was losing in the car before. Unfortunately for Farf, he's got himself back away thankfully quickly enough, but he's down to P7 then and still drifting. So unfortunately for Farf, I think the tyre temperatures are just not in his favour in that Racing Bull at this stage of the race. Then he has lost out then from P3 then down to P7. DRS has been disabled here as Marvsky's got himself back past Nigel then. So these two in the kick Sauber then continuing their fight brilliantly. Good stuff indeed then, but I think Nigel then had a mistake then because he was ahead, or further enough ahead then of his teammate. Then into the pits comes the new race leader then of Plotters. Then can he slow the car down in time? Yes, he can then, but I think he might lose out to the race lead then to Ultimate Beast. Then we'll have to wait and see. Then Farf and Irvine are switching places. Then Farf has been passed by the Haas then of Irvine up into P7 now for the Haas, I should say. Good stuff indeed. Then here comes Plotters. He's on to intermediate compound tyres, but where will he come out in respect to the rest of the field? The good thing we will see from Plotters potentially, if the rain carries on, or intermediate rain carries on, then he might not have to come back in for another stop. Then we saw a lot of action in gold then in terms of the intermediate compound tyres being used twice, being used once, being used all over the place at the latter stages of the race then. So potentially Plotters can go to the end of the race from here on those intermediate compound tyres, whereas some others may not be able to. Then Farf and Irvine then still battling away then through turns 2 and 3. Irvine has the inside then at turn 3, but he's still side by side. He sneaks ahead then of the Racing Bull as it stands then into sector 2 hairpin. Then he keeps hold of P7 then for the time being, and now getting chased down Kamara Racer and Jay Hings. And Brooksy is doing a fantastic job then in the Racing Bull then in P4 as it stands then, looking strong out there indeed. But I don't want to jinx anything as we've got a problem then for somebody. Yeah, it's a problem for Reflection. Then Reflection's had an issue at the final final corner again then, and he's once again lost his left end plate then as Reflection. Farf and Irvine then switching places once again. Then Irvine, oh no, it's a Mercedes. It's a Mercedes of Kiki. I think Kiki's had an issue then. Yes, he's had another issue, same as where Farf went off then as well in Sector 2. Then there's a few drivers then struggling out there, it looks like, with the conditions and, of course, with the car as well, tyre temperatures and that sort of thing out there at the moment as well. Then, unfortunately, for Kiki here is the latest victim then of Sector 2. Then it is getting a bit treacherous out there indeed, as we've got Ultimate Beast then leading the way by 5 seconds. And Farf and Irvine once again battling away then down the back straight. And Irvine this time takes hold of P7 into the hairpin. Goodness, I need to cough. There you go. That won't help. Brilliant stuff indeed. Brooksy's got a 3-second penalty. That is going to be very costly indeed. There's a few penalties starting to rack up. Then we've got 4 drivers out there with 3-second penalties to their time. Then 15 laps have commenced, then have completed, I should say, as we go on to lap 15 here as well. The Brooksy under pressure now from his teammate, well, not from his former rival, I should say, then, sorry, of Jay Hings. Then, of course, these two championship challengers then in bronze last season. And, of course, Brooksy, the champion, of Jay Hings, the runner-up then. And now it is a challenge once again then here in silver then for that P4 position as it stands here in this race as well. Great stuff indeed then. Nigel Kamara Racer then closing in the gap then in the Williams behind, then trying to get himself in contention then for that podium place. And if any mistakes do happen then for a couple of drivers ahead of him as well, then we'll have to wait and see. Then going over that curve is not going to be very good for you. But I think Farf and Kiki have found that out, unfortunately. But they are back underway. Then Kamara Racer then is within that range then of the 2 ahead of him as well. Then as Farf is on the curb as well. Then and that is definitely not where you want to go. Marvsky has snuck his way through then brilliantly. Well done to Marvsky. Then he is keeping the car under control in the kick sour. Then so far so good then for Marvsky. It is looking all right. Then we're only halfway through. We're just over halfway through this race at this moment. So we'll have to wait and see then if the intermediate compound tyres will get any better. Then if it will get any wetter or if it will dry out even as well. We'll have to wait and see which way it's going to go then as the cars slide their way through the spoon curve then. Looking very good indeed then. Unfortunately, I think for Nigel then he had a bit of a mistake on that spoon curve, and that could open the door then for MHD to try and get himself through. So far so good then, as to be fair it didn't turn out so bad for him, says Serious Mushroom. A big mistake from Plotters. Then he's down into P3 though, which isn't too bad. Then, like you said, Riyadh then has passed MHD then into P11 now on those intermediate compound tyres. Then MHD struggling out there, I think, on the intermediates. And goodness me, Nigel definitely struggling out on the intermediates as well. Then he is flying off at the final corner then, but he's kept hold of position, and he is now under pressure from Riyadh, I think, here as we fly into the penultimate corner, the first of the circuit, that is. First turns 1 and turns 2 then, both Ferraris then waiting in the wings then just outside the top 10 as it stands then, but Nigel is starting to struggle with those intermediate compound tyres there, that car twitching around then. Riyadh then is in close proximity as well then. So far so good then, out in front, the gap now down to 2 seconds. Mumford has been flying, look at this, it was over 5 seconds only a lap or 2 ago then, and now Mumford is really on the charge. Look at him go then. He is flying out there in the wet conditions and looking great in the Alpine. Then can he get himself back into the race lead? Then can he challenge Beast once again then for the race lead? Then of course these two have been rivals in the first 4 races then. Currently Mumford is, or currently before this race I should say, Mumford is leading the way in the championship by only 4 points then, after a back and forth then for race wins and podiums in the first 4 rounds between the Mercedes driver of Ultimate Beast and Mumford in the Alpine. And Mumford on the charge, and so is Plotters, to be fair, as well then. So potentially We might see a change of the lead very soon. We'll come back to that one then. Waiting to see what's going to be going on in the background as well. Riyadh and Nigel. Then Riyadh's already got himself up into the top 10, then passes Nigel before that DRS billboard. But he doesn't need DRS then. There's no DRS then in the wet conditions, of course. It has been disabled. Here comes MHD then trying to get himself past Nigel as well. Then into the hairpin we go then side by side for the Ferrari and for the Kick Sauber. And yep, oh no, he's gone off the circuit then as Nigel, and both Ferraris have gone through there. And that might have been might be under investigation then as well. Goodness me, Vessia trying to push his teammate through the final quarter as well, and that was getting close indeed. In the top of the order, it's under 1 second between the top three now, or between each of the top three, as Mumford then has been putting on the charge, and Nigel was in the pit lane, and what's happened to Nigel then? He's coming into the box then, calling it a day on the intermediate compound tyres already then. Maybe he thinks it's time for dries or time for wets, we don't know. But there we are then. We'll have to wait and see what the strategy is going to unfold then for the Kick Sauber driver then. Ferrari then battling it out then still. It's another set of intermediates then for Nigel, and potentially that is a strong call then from Nigel. He might have watched the gold race last night, because we saw a lot of drivers then pitting twice then for intermediate compound tyres when they started to wear out, and needed to come into the box then for another set then before they risked a puncture then. So potentially Nigel then is making a very smart move here onto a fresh set of intermediate compound tyres. It looks like he's trying to keep the car under control, is the difficult part for the Kick Sauber driver, but he has done so far then. But yeah, potentially we might see Nigel back up into the fight then at the latter stages of this race. We'll have to wait and see then. Out in front, look at this trio then, the trio then who are currently in the championship fight as well, or in the top of the fight I should say, for the championship, as we've got Mumford then trying to make a move then on Beast, then yellow flags then for an Aston Martin in the back of the field. Then here comes Mumford down the outside I should say, at the hairpin. Can he leap? Can he get himself enough room then? Yes he can. Then here he comes then on traction. Can he get himself past the Beast then? Yes he can. Then into the final quarter, then Mumford takes the race lead here onto lap 18, then 11 laps remaining at the end of this one, or at the beginning of this one I should say, as there they are, the trio then really close indeed. Then look at them go, 6 seconds back to Brooksy then, and Jay Hings P4 and P5 then, both of them doing a great job in this race as well then, it has to be said. Then into turns 1 and 2, then Mumford holds on to the race lead. Then Favre is back in the pit lane. He's only done 5 laps, he's done less laps than Nigel on the intermediate compound tyres, but he is calling it a day then on the intermediates as well, which is interesting stuff indeed. Far then into the box, and he is calling it a day then on the first set of intermediates. He's going back to intermediates once again as well though, so he's going to go to the end of the race from here. He's only done 5 laps on the intermediates though, so let's see what he can do then in this next stint. Then he's going to have to do 11 laps now on those next intermediate compound tyres, but away he goes. Then he's been passed by Nigel, who has made that undercut work very nicely indeed. Then Nigel's got himself past Vintage as well. Then I think into turn 1 and 2 as so does the Racing Bull. Then Racing Bull goes through of Farf. Then out in front then Plotters has got himself past Ultimate Beast. Beast is starting to struggle I think in this wet conditions. Of course he has done extra laps then, 2 extra laps than Mumford, 3 extra laps than Plotters of course, so the tyre wear might come into play for the Mercedes driver as well. Then potentially we might see him come in the pits as well to get off those intermediate compound tyres. He's struggling then through the spoon curve as well there, getting that car under grips then, or into grips I should say, as we fly down towards the hairpin. There we go, then the spray kicking off the back of the cars as we fly into the heavy braking zone now of the penultimate corner. Then nothing to lose for Nigel then. Smart move, says Mushroom as well then. Yeah, to be honest, I think like we said, for Farf and for Nigel, they might be able to sneak their way back into the points pair positions here at the latter stage of the race, especially if those drivers around them or ahead of them at the moment carry on into the to the checkered flag. Then if it stays intermediate conditions, we'll have to wait and see then if it does stay intermediate conditions, or if it changes back, or if it changes to full wet. We'll have to wait and see. But out in front then, the gap then at 1.2 seconds, the gap then between the top 2 and the Ultimate Beast then, who was controlling the lead, but these intermediate conditions are not playing into his hands here as it stands as well. Then unfortunately for the championship contender, then Mumford has taken the lead then, and Mumford is extending his championship lead as Mr. Elite is into the box as well. Then Mr. Elite calling it a day on the intermediate compound tyres. Can he slow himself down in time? Yes he can. And can he get himself onto another set of intermediate compound tyres, or is he going to go something else? We'll have to wait and see what he's going to go on to next. Then it is it wet? No, it's intermediates again then for the McLaren, then back underway. He will be out in P17, I believe, ahead of his teammate then just about. and back underway then. So like I said, there's a few drivers then switching on to a second set here of intermediate compound tyres. Potentially we might see some more chopping and changing. Then Brooksy's got himself past Brooksy. No, Brooksy's got himself Jay Hings has got himself past Brooksy. Then Brooksy was going wide there into sector 2, and that has let the Aston Martin go through then into that complex of corners. Then taking P4 now is Jay Hings. Then so far so good then out there in the Aston Martin. No penalties for him as well as it stands. But of course, Brooksy then might be coming into the pit lane as well. We'll have to wait and see what the top drivers, well, the top 12 drivers or so, the top 13 drivers are going to do in this race so far. Then they've still got, what have they got? They've got 9 laps to go after this lap is completed. Then there is Beast. He's now 2 seconds behind the top 2. He's losing time to the top 2. But of course, like I was saying, he is on older tyres than the top 2, and he is into the pits as well then. So he is calling it a day then on the intermediate compound tyres as well. Will we see any more pit activity then for the rest of the drivers? Then Brooksy, Jay Hings carries on. He's in the podium places now. Brooksy carries on then into P4. Then Irvine carries on then into the pit. No, it's into the pits comes Marvsky. Marvsky calling it a day then on the 6-lap old or 7-lap old mediums that he has put on that. Put on his first stint then for the intermediate conditions, I should say. Then Beast coming out of the pit lane now. Is going to be quite close between himself and Sweet MJP then into turn 1, I would imagine. Then here comes the Beast on the exit. Then it's close between Sweet MJP. Then the Sweet MJP is going to try and do some teamwork here to try and hold up the Beast. I don't think he's going to have much ability to do so then on those older intermediate compound tyres now. But Beast is of course trying to get himself through then, and of course Sweet MJP is trying to hold him up then for Mumford, who Mumford of course is his championship challenger, and of course there's going to be a bit of teamwork there on offer, I should say, then between the Beast and between the Alpines. But Beast flying around the outside there brilliantly into the hairpin, I should say, into sector 2, and takes hold of that position. Then back into the top 10 then for Beast. Then he is on the youngest tyres then in the top of the order. Goodness me, he is just drifting it round the corners then, is Beast. I think a bit aggressive on your tyres then, sir. But that is just my opinion. Nonetheless, and Beast then has got a 4-second gap to MHD. Then of course he's on the freshest intermediate compound tyres, apart from Marvsky, who of course has just pitted on the same lap then, but he is the furthest up the order than his Ultimate Beast to have pitted then for a second set of intermediate compound tyres here. Is it going to get too wet then? It's definitely getting wetter around this circuit, it looks like, but Beast then keeping the car pointed in the right direction. Then he's gaining on the Ferraris ahead of him as well. So it does show that the new intermediate compound tyres are working wonders out there. Will we see some more activity though? Not quite for the top 2. Then Jay Hings carries on, then so does Brooksy, so does Irvine. Then Kamara Racer is coming into the pit lane. Then Kamara Racer is coming into the pit lane. Riyadh gets P6 then from that position. Then of course Vessia carries on as well. Then MHD coming into the box as well. Then so MHD calling it then for the other intermediate compound tyres. I think I'm going to jinx it, but I think that the extra stop then is the way to go in this Grand Prix. Kiki coming in as well. Then Nigel then is going to get himself back into the top 10 then with this extra stop as well. The brilliant stuff indeed. Favre's got a 3-second penalty for multiple warnings then. Unfortunately for Favre, it is not going his way in this wet part of the race. Then it was going brilliantly at the start as Marvsky and Favre then are switching places. Then Marvsky up into the top 10 now as well. Then Favre coming out in P11 then, but he's under pressure. He's putting the pressure on Marvsky, I should say, then as we go through into the first couple of corners. Then Marvsky has dropped behind the oh my goodness me, wet compound tyres for a Sweet MJP. Then this could be a masterstroke if it works out then, but I don't think it's the right call just yet. Then yellow flag for Don of the Dons. He's had an issue then getting himself into the pit lane, and goodness me, where has he gone? But he has got himself out in the pit lane and out in the lead. Then Plotters takes the race lead then into the final spoon curve. Then Mumford has lost out then as we go onto the pack straight here. We can't really see the cars, to be honest. And to be honest, is it wet conditions? We do not know. But so far so good. Then fair play to all 20 drivers and still going in this race. Then 21 laps out of 28 then with 3/4 of the way through here. And it has been brilliant action so far then, from what we can see, that is. But of course it is starting to get a bit heavier now, and we can't really tell. As into the pits comes Plotters. Will we see wet compound tyres going on here? We might see some wet compound tyres then. Jay Hings and Brooksy coming into the pits, are they? Jay Hings is coming in, so is Brooksy as well. Then Irvine's following them in as well then from P5. Yellow flag, it's for Brooksy's. Brooksy's gone straight on at the pit entry then. That is bad news indeed. That is very costly indeed. unfortunately for Brooksy then, he needs to get that car slowed down. Then Plotters takes the lead. It's wet compound tyres going on the Red Bull car and the Alpine car. Jay Hings is going to go for a potentially for wet compound tyres as well. Yes, he is. Then Beast takes back P3, but he's on intermediate compound tyres as well. Then as we go through turns 1 and 2, can he hold on then is the question. Where has Brooksy come out then? Brooksy's been held in the pit lane then. Has he? No, he's teleported. Good stuff indeed then. Where has he come out is the question. And he has come out then in P9 then on wet compound tyres. Farf, his teammate, is skating off then on intermediate compound tyres. I think it's wet compound tyres here then for the end of the Chinese Grand Prix. It's a role reversal then from Gold, who started in the wets and then went to the intermediate compound tyres towards the end then. It's a role reversal here in Silver then. It's gone from dries to full wets then after a bit of intermediates in the middle as well then. Goodness me, look at the spray then. It is flying up all over the place then. And it's definitely wet conditions now as well then. So this is going to be great news indeed then for those who are pit for the wet compound tyres. Mumford has been held up by Beast then, and Plotters is trying to escape here. I think if he can get himself enough of a gap then to the rest of the field, then Donald the Dons has got himself back in the pit lane to get himself onto a set of wet compound tyres then for the last few laps. Then there's action galore. Then there's Brooksy's taken the position away from Farf and up into P8 now for the Racing Bulls driver. Brilliant stuff indeed. Nigel and Marsky then, these two are on intermediate compound tyres and they are still soldiering on out there as well. Then in the kick Saubers, that is, into sector 3 we go then. Wet compound tyres for Jay Hings. Then Jay Hings is in line, I think, for a podium place potentially here. If he can keep the car on track, then that car looked very squirrely indeed, didn't it? As Beast is keeping up the pace, though, to be fair, with the wet compound runners as well. Then Marvsky picks up a penalty, unfortunately for Marvsky. That's bad news. That's going to demote him down the order, especially with his teammate so close in proximity as well. Then into the final couple of corners, and Beast is carrying on then. The intermediate compound tyres then carrying on then for the Beast. Irvine then is up in P5 then. He's done a brilliant job then as Irvine then from the back of the grid then. We'll have a look at position changes. Please. Yes, we will. Then Irvine's gained 14 places as it stands. That's brilliant stuff indeed from the Haas driver then. It's Nigel into the pit lane I should say then. Into the pits then for Nigel. He's the only one, I think. He's coming in for a wet compound tyre, I believe. But it's definitely getting wetter out there, isn't it? And yeah, I think then Beast then is starting to struggle now compared to those on the wet compound tyres. The wet compound tyres, of course, need to get up to temperature, which is very difficult in these conditions. But they have done, I think, by now, as Kiki entering the pits as well, then slowing the car down then just in time. Then Nigel is... he has teleported again, so that's that. Good stuff indeed. Then there is your classification so far. Then Plotters has gained 4 places. Then Jay Hings has gained 7 places. Irvine has gained 14 places. Brilliant stuff indeed. But goodness me, the race is not over yet. Then Mr. Elite is off on the grass. Then that is not part of the circuit you want to be on, sir. And he's got himself back on the grey stuff, which is good stuff indeed. But he's on the intermediate compound tyres, and I think that's where... Is he? I think he's on the wet intermediate compound tyres. Bear with me 1 second. Yes, he is. I think that is why he is struggling then, because I think it is too wet then for the intermediates now. It's definitely time for the wet compound tyres, and we can see that then. I think Beast is doing a great job of holding on at this stage, but unfortunately I don't think it's going to be the right choice then. Here comes Mumford then on the back straight then. Yellow flags for a Haas. What's going on there? There's a yellow flags for a Haas coming up the pit lane then. I'm not quite sure what happened then. I think it was Vintage getting out of the box then, but he has got himself sorted, and back and away to Mumford has got himself past the Mercedes of Beast, then up into P2 now and chasing after Plotters there. I think this is where we're going to see the indicator then change then into wet compound tyres as Riyad then going for a move then down the inside of Brooksy. Picks up a second penalty. Unfortunately for Brooksy, that is going to be very costly indeed, but he is of course trying to keep that car on the grey stuff then, which is very difficult in these conditions for sure. Chasing after Marvsky, who I think is on intermediate compound tyres. Yes, he is then. If he can get himself past, he might be able to get himself a gap then to the kick Sauber car. But it's getting very treacherous out there indeed, as we've got a problem then for, I think, Swanshanks then. Swanshanks is slowing down for some reason, then he's got himself sorted and back underway. Goodness me, it is getting very spicy out there as well. Jay Hings, like I said, sorry, Jay Hings doing a brilliant job, I should say then, but it could be in line for a podium then. If Ultimate Beast does have to pit, then we'll wait and see then if that gap starts to come down quite quickly. Then Mr. Elite is into the pits as well, then he's calling it a day then on the intermediate compound tyres. Then Vessia past Kamara, then into P10, back into the top 10 then for the Ferrari driver. Then good stuff indeed. Then Favre's on intermediate compound tyres and trying to soldier on out there. Brooksy then still putting the pressure on Marvsky then. Can he get himself down the inside then into sector 2? Then can he get himself past and try and get that gap up then with the penalty situation then for the Racing Bull driver? Then Marvsky going very deep then on the intermediate compound tyres. I don't think they're dispersing enough water then, those intermediates, compared to the wet compound here. As here comes Brooksy on the charge as we go into sector 3. Then can he make the move then? Marvsky trying to keep the car under control then, I think, more than being worried about what's going on behind him then. But now through the spoon curve, this is where we'll see the wet compound tyres start to switch on then, compared to the intermediate compound tyres. He's all over the back of the Kick Alpine, I almost called it, once again then onto the back straight. And there we go then, look at the pace for the Racing Bull. Then he is alongside then with Marvsky. Then he's up into P6, then he takes P6 away, and good stuff indeed then, brilliant driving indeed then from Brooksy. Then up into P6 now. Can he scamper off then and try and get a gap then with the penalty situation that he's got for that Racing Bull? But it's not all done and dusted just yet. Then Brooksy then doing a good job though, and potentially can get some good points here for himself and the team here in this race. Then Mumford is 8 tenths or 9 tenths of a second back behind Plotters at this stage then, but Plotters doing a good job of holding on to the race lead as it stands then, just over a second now. Beast is struggling here, but he's holding on to that podium place as well. Then 9 seconds back is Jay Hings. Then P4, would he be his best result in silver? Then it'd be fantastic stuff indeed then if he can hold on to it here as well. So far so good then. Irvine doing a great job on the intermediate compound tyres, and I think just hoping that he can hold on as well then in this final few laps here as well. Into sector 2 we go now for Irvine. Then Brooksy then has got himself ahead of Marvsky, but he's not gapping the Kick Sauber for the time being just yet. Still half a second back to the green machine as we go through into sector 2 now as well. Of course, Marvsky with his penalties might be in a bit of danger then of losing, dropping down to P9 potentially then. Of course, there's 3 seconds for Marvsky, 3 seconds for Favre as well then. So I think maybe Vessia, maybe Riyadh would be able, and Marvsky would be able to jump him. With the penalty situation, then we'll have to wait and see then at the checkered flag then, but it could get quite close then. But Brooksy then still looking on track then for some points here as it stands then. Of course, if the track gets even wetter, then we might see the intermediate compound tyres drop off then for Marvsky and for Favre, which would give Brooksy even more of a gap. Then we've got yellow flags fluttering in sector 3 for what then? I think I don't know. So that was good. Comprehensive stuff indeed then. We've got yellow flags because there's a problem. I think there's somebody on the Don of the Dons then is on the almost about to be lapped then, and he is now ahead of the race leaders, that is just about then, going through into the first couple of corners then of lap 26 then of 28 then. 3 laps remain here in this Grand Prix. It is wet here in silver then, but the drivers have been putting on a fantastic race so far then. It's been absolutely brilliant so far in this Grand Prix. And thankfully everyone, I'm going to jinx it now, but everyone is still in this race as it stands. And here comes Vess here then on Favre, and of course that is wet compound tyres versus intermediate compound tyres, and Favre has been passed then, but oh no he's not. Oh my goodness me, that is a lunge and a half, if you want to say that. There, give me 1 second. Yes, good stuff indeed then. Favre still battling away then with Vessia then into turns 2 and 3, and still ahead now of the Ferrari, just about then into the dying embers of sector 1 now. Oh goodness me, that pixelated spray is fantastic, isn't it? Looks like I'm playing Minecraft, but yes, fantastic stuff indeed then. Mumford is mounting a charge once again then. The gap down to just under 5 tenths of a second, half a second as it stands then, going through the spoon curve then onto lap 27 very shortly. Penultimate lap of the race then due to unfold here. Your driver of the day candidates are Jay Hings, Irvine, Beast and Mumford. That is what you can get your votes in for in the comment section. But Mumford is going for the race lead here, into the race lead then, into the hairpin, and takes the race lead then before we start off lap 27 here as well then. Brilliant stuff indeed then. You can't quite tell what's happening on the stream because the spray is all over the place then, but there is an Alpine in the lead there, and he cruises on to lap 27 here as well then. Riyadh has got himself past Marvsky, we can't quite tell then, and Favre has been passed by Vess here as well in the background, but there is cars there, I can tell you, but I can't see through the Minecraft spray, but there is Riyadh, and he is up into P7, then Marvsky dropping down to P8, then the intermediate compound tyres struggling massively out here as well. Then Favre Farf and Vessia then still battling away then as Nigel picks up a penalty. Then Nigel's dropped down to P14, unfortunately, and he's struggling out there on the wet tyres. Then unfortunately for Nigel, then he picks up a penalty for his troubles as well. Then out in front, then 3 seconds the gap between Riyadh and Brooksy. Potentially Brooksy might still get P7 here. I think he's still in the fight then for that position as well. Then Farf and Vessia then battling away then is actually helping Brooksy get that gap. Then of course Vessia has no penalties as Vessia has gone through though into turn 2 and up into P9 now for the Ferrari driver. Then good stuff indeed, but Farf still deciding to stick his nose in there, and that is not where it belongs then. Farf Sweet has got himself past no he hasn't, yes he has, no he hasn't. I thought MHD and Sweet then still battling away then, these two. Goodness me, I cannot tell where the car is, to be honest, as Sweet going down the inside then with the wet compound tyres, slows the car down just in time. Then yellow flags for an Aston Martin. It is Swanshanks, thankfully, not Jay Hings, because Jay Hings is doing a great job out there in P4. Then penultimate lap of the race, and here comes Plotters. Somewhere, I think, comes Plotters in the background then, but he is still soldiering on out there. Fantastic stuff indeed. Beast is doing a great job on those intermediate compound tyres to actually just stay on the podium as it stands then. 6 seconds in the gap to Jay Hings. Can he close that in 1 lap? Then we'll have to wait and see. If it starts torrentially raining, which it pretty much already is, to be fair, then potentially that gap can come down very quickly indeed. Then we'll have to wait and see then. Be on the right tyres at the right time then, but it seems like, oh my goodness me, as Plotters has had an issue then out of the final corner, then onto the final lap as well then. Here we go then, 7/10 of a second, and is the gap between the top two as we start off the final lap here in China. Then so far it has been absolutely as Donald Dons has retired. Goodness me, he just jinxed it. I did jinx it, to be fair, on like lap 27. I said that there's no retirements, and then Don the Dons has gone and crashed then on the final corner of the penultimate lap then. So unfortunately for Don the Dons, that is well, unfortunately for Silver, that is 1 DNF in this race, which is down in the dumps then for that one. But so far so good for the rest of the field. Fingers crossed everybody else stays in this race then to the checkered flag now. But there we go then. Plotters then, after that mistake then at the final corner, then has been very costly indeed, because he's lost out to that gap then to Mumford, and Mumford is now in control then for this final half of this race, final half of this lap, I should say, of this final lap in Shanghai then. A very, very soaking wet Shanghai indeed then, as the Minecraft spray then carries on into the third sector, the final sector 3 of the evening as well then. So far so good then for Mumford, then holding on to that race lead then in the wet conditions, and Beast has done a great job of holding on to the podium places. Then Jay Hings is gaining hand over fist now. It's now down to 5 seconds, but unfortunately it's just not enough then at this stage, but he's done a brilliant job nonetheless. Then we'll go back to this battle here as well then, because we've got Mumford, we've got Plotters, we've got Ultimate Beast then on the podium places. Then here comes Mumford then into the hairpin. Can he hold on to the race lead? Yes, he can, into the hairpin. But now Plotters, can he mount a charge then into the final corner? I don't think so. As we go through the final corner then for the Alpine, it is Mumford in these pouring conditions who wins here in China then for the second time this season. A brilliant race victory then for the Alpine driver. What a win for Mumford. Then he takes the crown, then he extends his championship lead as well then. Brilliant stuff from the Alpine driver then. What a win for Mumford here in Shanghai. Plotters then P2, a brilliant race from him as well then. Fantastic stuff indeed from Plotters then, after a brilliant call then onto the intermediate compound tyres at the right time, and the wet compound tyres as well at the final stages as well. Brilliant stuff indeed from Plotters then. P2 on the grid, P2 in this race then. Brilliant, well done indeed to the Red Bull driver then. Beast soldiered on then on the intermediate compound tyres. He kept hold of a podium place then in the end, and well done to him as well then for keeping going on those intermediate compound tyres in these very, very treacherous conditions. Fantastic stuff indeed from Beast then. Jay Hings P4, brilliant from Jay Hings. What a race victory that will be like as well then for Jay Hings then, coming up from bronze then. P2 in bronze last season, P4 here in China in silver season 8. What a race that is from the Aston Martin driver. Brilliant stuff indeed then from him, as Swanshanks has also retired as well then. Fantastic stuff indeed. Then Irvine, as Kiki's got a 3-second penalty for something there, but I'm not quite sure. But Irvine then P5, then brilliant stuff from Irvine as well. Then he gained, what did he gain? He gained so many places then in the end. He gained 14 places then in this race. Fantastic indeed from the Haas driver. Then Riyadh P6 in the end. Brilliant result from him as well. Good recovery after a difficult qualifying. Brooksy, his first result of the season then, and it's 6 points then for the Racing Bull team. Brilliant stuff indeed. And unfortunately, the only Racing Bull to score then with Farf down in P11 then, and we finally got through the last stragglers then to get themselves across the line. But there we go then. Brooksy then P7 in the end of this Grand Prix. Brilliant stuff indeed then. Mumford says Ginger Age then. What a race, says Irvine as well then. Brilliant result then from the Haas driver, like I just said as well then. GG's guys from Mushroom as well then. Irvine is your driver of the day then in the comment section. So the Haas driver claims the driver of the day here in Shanghai. Brilliant stuff indeed. There is your podium drivers then. There is Mumford on the top step then. Plotters P2 in the Red Bull, and Ultimate Beast in the Mercedes P3 then here in China. What a race indeed then. Brilliant stuff indeed, and fantastic then to the drivers then who get themselves to the checkered flag in those horrible conditions as well then. And what a race it was as well. It unfolded fantastically through the dries, through the inters, and through the full wets as well then. Absolutely fantastic stuff indeed. We'll see more of that then hopefully from Silver then. That was brilliant. There is your classification then for the Chinese Grand Prix. Mumford takes the race win, extends his championship lead then by another, 9 points, I think. That's the maths. So I believe his championship is 13 points then over Beast. Then Plotters P2, then Beast in P3 with the fastest lap as well. Then that's going to be very crucial indeed. Then Jay Hings P4, Irvine P5, Riyadh P6, Brooksy P7, Vessia P8, Marsky P9, Kamara Racer rounds off the top 10, then Farf P11, then Sweetenger P12, MHD P13, Nigel P14, Mr. Elite P15, Kiki P16, Reflection P17, Vintage P18, Swan Shacks, and Dollar Dons round off the grid in P19 and P20. What a showing indeed then. We'll get ourselves some race interviews hopefully as well then. Let's get this up on the screen. Fingers crossed it works. Good stuff indeed then. We will crack on then with our race, our P3 in this race. Ultimate Beast then, hopefully he's joined. Ultimate Beast, after that first stint in this race in the dry compound, the dry compound tyres I should say, did you think you might have the race win under your belt?
Oh, just a wow. That's what I put in the chat. Just wow.
Wow, indeed, it was wow. To be fair, from our point of view, or from my point of view, watching. But yes, in terms of race strategy, then did you know what was going to happen in this race then, in terms of the weather, or did you just have to wing it when it came?
I kind of know because it says before you start the race, but I didn't think properly, and I started on mediums. I should have done hards, to be honest. That was a bit of a bottle in my eyes, and then I boxed too early on inters, the first inters. I boxed when my tyres was 65%. It was dead, honestly dead. And then I boxed again on for inters. Then it was wet 2 laps later, so not great.
But you held on in the wet conditions with the intermediate compound tyres. We thought you were going to be swallowed up then by those on the wet compound behind you. But after Plotters and Beast, and Mumford got past you, you still held on very well indeed then to those top 2 for quite a while, and had a sizable gap then back to P4 of Jay Hings, and so you were quite comfortable in the end for a podium. Then did you think you were you worried about those on the wet compound tyres behind you, or did you think the gap was big enough for you to hold on?
Yeah, I think the gap was big enough. I was just hoping the last, if I could manage to hang on, I was hoping that my tyres would be better than the wets, but it stayed wet.
It stayed wet indeed, but a fantastic result from you for Mercedes as well. Then I should say, then in the standings that is, and you carry on the championship charge. Then of course Mumford then does escape slightly, but he's still within reach then for yourself, and we'll see what we can get onto then in Miami in a week's time. Then, but congratulations then to Beast in the Mercedes MP3 here in China then for silver season 8. Then brilliant stuff indeed. Then P2 is Plotters in the Red Bull. Then another fantastic race from yourself then, sir, and you were battling then in the end then for the race win. Then we saw a bit of a mistake then in the final corner on lap 27. Did you think that might have cost you your chance to challenge for the race win on the final lap?
I wouldn't have said so. No, I think on the inters, I think I had the slight edge over Mumford in terms of pure pace. And then as soon as it switched to the wets, I'd have said he was quicker. And I tried to keep him behind, but I had a setup on which was not particularly quick on the straights, because I knew that the rain was coming, and I sort of wanted to, set the car up for go quite well through the corners. But it meant that as soon as he was within half a second on the back straight, it was pretty easy for him to pass. But no, well done to him and Beast as well. It was a pretty exhausting race. But yeah, no, happy with P2.
Tell me about it. I'm sweating here as well. But no, it was a fantastic race from yourself then, and of course, like you said, then it was a bit of a mix up in terms of strategies and throughout that race as well. So I think it was all sorts of drivers and all sorts of strategies all over the place as well, as we saw at the checkered flag. But a brilliant race from yourself, then elevating yourself back into contention then with the top three in the championship fight. Then do you reckon you can do a few more races like this and hold the fight to them as well?
Hopefully, I mean I started off quite well in Bahrain, and the last couple of races, for numerous reasons, haven't been particularly good. But hopefully, I can have a few more like this, and we'll see what we can do in the standings.
Good stuff indeed. Hopefully, we'll see you back in here for the next interview in Miami in a week's time. Then, so good stuff from Plotters then in the Red Bull. Then P2 here in China tonight. Then, and our race winner then Mumford once again on the top step of the podium. How are you feeling after that race?
Yeah, really good. Kind of expecting it now, to be honest. I thought the pace was really good throughout on the dries, the inters and the wets, and yeah, fair play to Potters. I thought his pace on the inters was really good as well. So yeah, made it difficult at the end.
And you played the strategy just right. It looked like as well. And we said we heard from your rivals on the podium as well here that you were flying in the wet conditions. There, we saw the gap at one point. Then it was over 5 seconds to the race leader of Beast at the time, and it just started to disappear lap after lap. Then by a second or two, and at that point, did you think that you might have the race win in the bag?
No, because at that point Plotters was always like 1.5 seconds behind. So I mean, I think me and Plotters were like a second quicker than everyone. So it was always going to be a two-man battle at the end. So yeah.
And fair play. You extend your championship lead. Then are you looking forward to potentially adding more points in Miami, or do you reckon it's not a track for yourself?
Well, at this point, I'd fancy myself at any circuit, to be honest with you.
There we go. Then the confidence is flowing through his veins, as we can hear. But no, brilliant stuff indeed from Mumford. Then your race winner here in China, then in the Alpine. Then so brilliant stuff indeed to the top three. Fantastic stuff indeed to Silver as well. Then for all the drivers who took to the track then and put on a show here tonight. Then they'll be back in Miami in 1 week's time. Then for next Monday. But of course we've got bronze coming up tomorrow night here in Shanghai, and a preview of Miami then for the 100% League on Wednesday night as well. Then so stay tuned to ALR. There's plenty more action coming up, and we'll see you very soon.